Hey everyone, and welcome back to another industry report. It's a pretty busy time on the channel. There's another video going up today and The Division 2 dropping tomorrow. But for today, well, Obsidian. The staff over there must have a very funky feeling right now, having had the public relations equivalent of being cast from the sauna into a bath of ice. From Todd Howard to Tim Sweeney, the story of Obsidian's The Outer Worlds has been heavily shaped by external factors involving well-known figures in the games industry. Yes, Epic have locked down another game exclusive, but this time it's one that people deeply care about. Past that, a number of other titles have also been confirmed as Epic Games Store exclusives. To get you caught up, Obsidian are developing a game called The Outer Worlds. Imagine a Fallout New Vegas style RPG, but in a more Firefly-like setting. That's kind of what they're going for. A game that was also announced with near-perfect timing, being able to ride off the Fallout 76 news wave. Of course, 76 disappointed in almost every front, essentially being on the opposite track to what most Fallout fans wanted, having microtransactions, no NPC, and less of an overt story. Well, The Outer Worlds is a lot more of the opposite. As I said, New Vegas, but in a Firefly world. Fallout New Vegas, as compared to Fallout 3, was actually far better written, I would say, with a lot more character to it. Fallout 4, I would say, proved to be worse written with less personality, I think somewhat being regarded as a bit of a disappointment as time has went on. Now, Obsidian's Fallout game was the highlight in the modern era of Fallout, but their DNA goes all the way back to Fallout 1. That's a game that Obsidian founder Fergus Urquhart actually directed. So 76 disappointed players on launch, but then it continued to mess up just about everything after that, to the point where the enjoyment-based hate watching of content around the game was so strong that videos covering the color saturation of a blue jacket bit of merchandise performed extremely well. Yes, watching the dumpster fire of 76 was so fun that people enjoyed watching someone dryly read a product description on a YouTube video. And I think that tells you just about everything you need to know about the community response to Fallout 76. Therefore, The Outer Worlds was seen as a bit of a savior. It's a traditional game that's bucking a lot of the modern trends. It's not interested in a live service plan or microtransaction. It's a game whose makers straight up said, you know, they've got the budget to make a game of a limited scope and their goal is to deliver a really fun 15 to 40 hours that you can have. Not a game that wants you to be in an infinite Skinner box playing for 3 years, as seems to be so popular as of late. A real throwback in a world where consumers are thirsty for one. But you only live for so long as the hero, because it has just been announced that The Outer Worlds is an Epic Games Store exclusive on PC, launching on other platforms 12 months later. Bar the Microsoft Store. Of course, Obsidian is owned by Microsoft now, but I don't think anyone actually uses the Microsoft Store for gaming. Suffice to say, this has not been met with glee. People are not at all happy. This is a game that had extreme emotional attachment because of external reasons. It's a game that had superfans before its launch, a game that was thrown around as an example of doing everything right. Now here's the thing, the backlash to 76 is in part a backlash to its business model and its status as a live game. Well, the Epic Games Store exclusivity is, I think, something that will have massive overlap with that. It is a business model backlash, meaning that the people who championed this game for so long are now feeling themselves being somewhat betrayed, as signing with Epic is basically seen as turning over to the dark side these days. Why? Well, exclusivity is generally disliked, but particular in PC. Now look, personally, I am fine with exclusivity on first-party developed games like, let's say, Sony or Microsoft's owned studios. That's an example of companies putting massive money into hardware R&D, creating a console, and then making content for their console. On PC, exclusives based on a platform just seem arbitrary. A lot more than on consoles. Playing a game on a PC, it's just running an exe. Sure, Steam provide an overlay and a friends list, but that's not the same as selling 90 million plus PS4s. The only thing that I can say in favor of Epic is that a 12% store cut feels a lot more in line with what a PC storefront actually does than the 30% of Steam. Look, Apple sell millions of iPhones, Microsoft and Sony sold a combined 130 million plus consoles in this gen, Nintendo sold 40 million Switches. That takes a hell of a lot of work, that creates a new market, so I'm fine with them charging 30%. But guess what? Valve doesn't do a tenth of the work that they do, they don't have the overhead, and while sure, Steam is convenient, I think we can all agree that 30% is absurd. shirt. Put it this way, the more money developers get, especially for the indies and the AAAs, the more that gets reinvested in those companies and their games, especially for indies. When I look at my own revenue projections for our first planned release, it could be the difference between staff getting a pay rise or not. If the game does well, it could be the difference between having another artist or not. And it really would impact people's job security. So yes, I am in favor of stores moving to what I think is a far more fair revenue split, but Epic really is making it seem like a bad thing, and that's the problem. This isn't the first game they've claimed though, with notable examples being the crowdfunded Phoenix Point and Metro Exodus, both games that I'd say are more niche than most games, with core audiences that love them, and that means that the backlash is particularly vicious in both cases, especially with Phoenix Point. We know that the Phoenix Point developer Snapshot got a lot of upfront money to the point where they could commit to a full year of DLC and give that away to all pre-purchasers for free. So I think we're going to see a trend coming here, and it's one that you and I may not like. The industry is moving towards big live service games that are crammed full of microtransactions because it's all about those investor-friendly recurring revenue streams. Well, single-player games with expansions just aren't really as much of that, but they still are very expensive to make. Nice titles with limited audiences just tend to be a hard proposition for publishers, but for a storefront, things are different. The incentives are different. Epic know how diehard those audiences are for those games, and since those are games in underserved markets, they know that customers are going to feel starved of games like that, and that they'd be more willing to break and go to a store that they don't like. So that's what it's like for Epic. It's powerful leverage. For developers, well, they might want to make the game of their dreams, but they're probably going to be stopped by finances. To have a game be picked up by a store with a large cash advance, that essentially would de-risk a lot of niche games to the point where more of them could be made. And I actually suspect that this is Epic's plan, to become a storefront crammed with exclusive boutique games. It does suck and does not suck for customers. It's a business practice that I think we all dislike, especially in its most arbitrary form. However, if there's development funds going there, that could be a bit different. And also, the Epic Game Store just sucks. The bright side is that Epic do have a pretty developer-friendly business model that might actually increase the number of those niche games that are made. Very interestingly to me, though, it puts developers against customers right now, and that absolutely is a worrying thing. Unfortunately for this deal, we have no way of finding out how much money was actually exchanged. We do know that Snapshot Games received enough money that they would be able to go ahead and refund all crowdfunding and still be ahead, but they're a 30-person studio. Obsidian in 2017 was 170 people, and it's likely quite a lot larger now. They also know that they have a large and dedicated audience, especially for this game. They know that this game essentially is near guaranteed to be a success. So either they want a cash injection or, they know that even if they lost like half their audience, they'd still come out much ahead on PC with Epic. Now, if they sell 1 million copies at $60 each, that's $60 million. On Steam, that would earn them $42 million because of the split, but on Epic, it would earn them $52.8 million. So even if they lost 5% sales because of the Epic Game Store, that would still earn them $50 million. So you're looking at like 10 to 12 to 13 to maybe 15 million more dollars for making this one choice. And ultimately, that's the thing. What you and I feel about our convenience doesn't matter. Numbers don't care about emotions. They're cold and they're hard, and when you run the numbers, you can easily see why somebody whose prime responsibility is keeping people in a job would make a decision like this. So the Epic Store sucks. Their business model sucks. And it's a business model that CEO Tim Sweeney has doubled down on recently. And it also sucks from a consumer's perspective. Yet, for developers, the numbers are the numbers. They're hard to argue with. Right now, it's on Valve to compete, because if Valve matched Epic's revenue split, unless Epic started trying to flat out fund new games, then we'd probably see less people be willing to do Epic exclusivity. And we'd be in an industry then with more equitable revenue splits on stores. Because let's be real, Valve don't do enough to earn 30%. That's just clear. I basically think that no store that does not have a hand in creating a new platform can charge 30%, and for it to make sense. Even the prestige of being on Steam, that used to get you loads of sales, but now that Steam is so open, that's barely the case. So you're just sitting there wondering, that 30%, that's from an old time. It's not worth that anymore. Basically, right now, we're in an uncomfortable middle position where something really annoying has happened, but we've not seen the rest of the market respond. Valve need to get up off their arse and do 85%. I think if that happens, a lot of developers will make a lot more money, and they'll also be a lot more willing to not go for epic exclusivity, and overall, the customer will win. If developers, especially indies and AAs, are able to make more money from their games, they can reinvest in their teams, they can make more games, and also we can benefit from discounts, because if you're not giving 30% away to Valve, you can maybe give a bit more to your customers, and indeed, some games have decided to go on Epic with a bit of a discount. And then just to finish up, The Outer Worlds is not the only game to be taken. Much of Quantic Dream's back catalogue is going to the Epic Store with exclusivity, as is Remedy's Control and Panache Digital's Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey. A very awkward name, but it's a game that doesn't have name recognition, but it is from the creator of Assassin's Creed. No doubt, more Epic store exclusives are going to be announced, and no doubt there will be more backlash. So all eyes are on Valve to meet Epic head on. They can do it, and frankly, if Valve are lackadaisical about this for maybe 1, 2, or 3 years, then guess what? Tim Sweeney will be right. He will take enough developers over to his store that enough developers will be on that store to the point where Valve will start losing games that are going to sell a lot of money. Now, yes, they do have a tiered system where I think games with more than $50 million in revenue get a 20% revenue split. I think that's as good as it goes, but being real, for indies, that's going to need to be a lot better, because indies are not going to be hitting that 50 million revenue mark. And frankly, it's not like indies are, if they're willing to give like that lower split to those massive games, then it kind of shows that the indies are not the largest part of their overall earnings, and they probably could afford to be a bit more competitive in that regard, and I certainly hope that they do. There then is another bit of Epic Game Store related news, and this is a really interesting one. They've actually decided to partner with Humble, meaning that Humble will actually be able to sell Epic Game Store exclusive titles. Now that might seem a little bit wild, but there's a reason why they're okay doing that with Humble and why they're not okay, well, with Valve or Good Old Games, because Good Old Games have a platform, they have a launcher, same of course goes for Steam. As for Humble, well, they're pretty much just selling a key. So it seems like over time, Epic may actually start having third-party key resellers be involved, which is an interesting departure from, of course, what we saw, previously with multiple sites getting pretty damn ticked off about The Division 2. So overall, this means that yeah, they're really just going against every other platform, and they are okay to have keys for their store sold on third-party sites. Basically, it's a massive, assault on Steam. That's pretty much what it is. Ultimately, they just want more people purchasing keys for the Epic Games Store, and it could end up being that they don't really care where those keys are actually purchased, be it their store or be it a third party like Humble. So there you go. That is it for this video. Certainly, I think going to be a bit of a controversial one, because there are some hard truths that are uncomfortable that I think a lot of people don't want to hear, but I think they do need to be pointed out so that everybody understands why the developers are doing this. It's not that they're evil, it's that they want to keep their people in a job and earn more for their companies. At the end of the day, you've got to think about this from a game designer's perspective. That's actually not dissimilar to an economist's perspective. You got to look at the incentives of everyone who's involved and work out what decisions people will make based on their pressure points. Once you do that, it's far easier to understand how all these stores and all this stuff actually works. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's another one on Google's streaming platform Stadia up today, and The Division 2 tomorrow. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.